You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Callie Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Callie Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
Before we get started, let's hear this short message from one of my supporters.
All the things that you won't do.
Did you know 81% of Americans would like to become a published author? Chances are you might be one of them. What's stopping you? Writing and publishing a book takes a lot of work and is expensive, right? Well, not anymore. For your next book project, or even your first, team up with Hassle-Free Books. They make it so easy to become an author. They remove all of the fuss and struggle and make it smooth and simple. And it's far more affordable than you could ever imagine. Go to hasslefreebooks.com and use promo code UNPAUSE to receive a 10% discount off of any book project. Get started right away and become a published author in as little as 45 days. For your free 1-hour book formula guide, which will show you just how painless it can be to become an author, head to hasslefreebooks.com today.
All right. Thanks again for joining me. Let's get started with today's show.
Took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of life.
Welcome to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes, the Addictions Coach and the Addictions Academy. My next guest is Shapshay, and she is an award-winning writer, mental health awareness activist, baker, and comedian. She received her BFA in directing from NYU Tisch School of the Arts. Her short documentary, The Sound of Silence, was showcased in the NYU Film Festival. In 2005, she hit bottom and checked into rehab. Upon leaving rehab, she was fired from her job, going through a divorce, and was homeless. Carrie Fisher took her in. While living with Princess Leia, she wrote the novel Junky American Princess. In 2008, she became a stand-up comic, and she performs regularly at the Comedy Store, the Improv, Laugh Factory, and many other venues. When Carrie Fisher died in 2016, she decided to write an article for the LA magazine about the relationship. The article resulted in her working for mental health organizations, including continuing on Carrie's work. Welcome, Shapshay. So how are you today? Welcome to the show.
Great. It's great. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So tell me this. Everyone's going to ask, what was it like being Carrie Fisher's friend?
It was wacky. It was awesome. It was exciting, eccentric. We were like, she was my soul sister. We had the same kind of wacky brain. You know, we both had mental illness and addiction, and both writers and comedians, and our brains thought similarly. So we were instant like soulmates, I think.
So now that just gave me images of the two of you climbing out of a window somewhere and being crazy and wacky.
Well, what she'd like to do is she would wake me up at like 3:00 in the morning. We would garden, or we would like chain smoke and eat ice cream and watch old movies in her bed. Like one time she woke me up and was like, okay, let's go burn some records. I'm like, okay, that seems normal.
That's crazy. That's like you guys got into trouble, but not really. Like you did crazy, but still controlled things.
Yeah, she just is very eccentric. And I'm down for anything, I'm not like normal either. So it was always interesting. Or like, let's go skinny dipping at 2:00 in the morning. And it was amazing. It was just fun.
That's awesome. So now tell me about this nonprofit. that you're running and you're in charge of?
I'm not in charge of it. What happened is that I wrote an article for LA Magazine, as you said before, and it was a deeply personal essay about Carrie. She died on my birthday, and it was like the rug was pulled out from underneath me. And I felt such grief and loss. I mean, she was so important to me in my early sobriety. She saved my life. If it wasn't for her, I would be dead. The A group that I was in took me off my medication, and I was crazy, like suicidal, and she literally talked me off a ledge. And so when she died, I lost it. And I wanted the world to know just how special she was and just what a great person and caring and loving and kind person she was. And so I wrote the article for LA Magazine, and it went viral. And then out of the blue, these like mental health organizations contacted me, because in the article I talked about both having mental illness and struggling with addiction. I'm sober over 12 years now, but Carrie struggled more with her illness. I think she self-medicated a lot, and people don't understand how difficult it is to have bipolar and be an addict at the same time. And her disease, both diseases were progressing, so it didn't surprise me. I had a premonition like a week before that something was going to happen. I know it sounds weird, but I did. But I wrote that article, and it went viral. And This Is My Brave, an organization, a mental health organization, contacted me and said, will you produce one of our shows? And then the Depressed Cake Shop, because I'm also a baker, contacted me and said, will you bake some depressed baked goods for the show? And so I hooked up with Depressed Cake Shop and with This Is My Brave, and just became like an instant, can you help us and get the word out there to end the stigma against mental illness and addiction? I was like, for Carrie, I would do anything. And then the You Rock Foundation contacted me, and there were many other organizations, and I try to do as much work for all of them as I can. But I'm producing a show and hosting, doing stand-up November 7th, which you are in, which is great.
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be fun.
Yeah. It's going to be great. It's at the Comedy Store, and I'm covering the basis for both, because I'm one of the few that talks about dual diagnosis. It's usually like you talk about mental health or you talk about addiction, and there's never they don't come together in a way that they should, because most people I think in the program have both.
Right.
For me, I was self-medicating, and for Carrie, she was self-medicating. So it's something we need to talk about, and all these suicides that are happening too. We're not dealing with mental health and addiction together. And so there are very few organizations, if any, that do that. And so that's what my platform is.
Well, you're right. And as a therapist with 21 years in the industry, we're either trained in addiction or we're trained in mental health. We're not dually trained. There's no track for us to go to be a mental health therapist and a drug and alcohol therapist. So you pick a track. And then what happens is you get thrown in one of these jobs at a treatment center, and you don't have the skill set to handle the second part. So only half of your job gets done.
Exactly. I work with the Senate and Congress, and I go to all these mental health, events, and they talk about mental health, and there's no addiction being mentioned, or it's mentioned just very shortly. And it's really for this to come together. So I think we're looking at, some reform in laws, and some, awareness for both things to come together. And so that's what I'm working on with Senate and Congress.
That's excellent, because different states have different rules too. Certain states have qualifications that you get state licensed as a mental health practitioner. And then when it comes to addiction, it's the wild, wild west. For example, Florida. If you want to be mental health, you have to get licensed by the state. But if you just want to do addiction, there's really, just a test. You just take a test and boop, you're certified.
Wow.
So it's so unregulated and it's so diverse that we can't even agree upon, what the requirements are for the care, let alone give good care. So you're seeing that on the back end, and I see it on the front end.
Yeah. And the healthcare bill is, the new one that didn't pass is similar to that. Like each state would decide, and it's too like willy nilly. There needs to be, reform across the board.
Right, exactly. And there needs to be true treatment where you go in and you get mental health and you get addiction, and we, lower the stigma. Because for some people, it's not okay to be a drug addict, but it's okay to have bipolar. And then vice versa. It's okay to be a drug addict, but God forbid you have bipolar or borderline or schizophrenia, then you're crazy or cuckoo. So we have such bad stigma as a society that you can't have one, and God forbid you have both. You're just a mess. So we really have to bring attention to it and really, bring the stigma on it down. And you're doing fantastic work to do that.
Yeah, I'm trying really hard. With my day job and everything else that I do, it's a lot of work. And I think the show will be, I think it'll be successful. And I would like to do more shows and festivals and books and just everything I can. It means so much to me to keep Carrie's name alive, to keep her legacy alive. And she really fought for ending the stigma against mental illness and addiction. And she worked with many organizations, and she really, this was her cause. So, and I don't want her name to die out. And I don't think it will because of Star Wars ever, but I don't want her death to be in vain.
Now, she was one of the few celebrities that actually brought attention to mental illness, not just addiction, but she put herself out there. Now,
she was not afraid to show her bipolar and to say, you know what, I'm mentally ill, and because I'm saying this, you can say it too.
Right, and that's rare to have somebody at that level say, I don't care if you don't accept me. This is what's happening, and I want you to become aware of it. Now, with you picking up where she left off, have you had any pushback or any issues at all, or has everyone been very supportive?
For the most part, people have been supportive. I think it's a matter of I get a lot of people saying well, I would rather admit that I'm an addict than I have mental illness. They're still very ashamed of it.
Mm-hmm. What was your personal battle with? I know about you had a food addiction battle. What was that like? Trying to be in the limelight and be a comedian and be up there and go through this stuff.
Well, I've had an anxiety disorder since I was little, and depression. The anxiety was like agoraphobia. I mean, I've been to every single therapist imaginable, done exposure therapy, done this therapy, done that therapy. I went to see Kim Basinger's doctor. I was like, it's just something that's plagued me my whole life. I've been on every medication imaginable. I'm not on any medication now, but because I find that in the program, dealing with things spiritually is the best bet for me. I don't like to throw a drug. I don't like to think that a pill can fix everything.
Tell me about that. What did you do for your personal recovery? How did you basically slay the dragon? What did you do?
Well, I did go to therapy. And I threw myself into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I threw myself into any sort of recovery, spiritual recovery. So, the big book ends in one way, spiritual awakening. And I was really looking for that. And Eckhart Tolle, I would listen to Power of Now nonstop. It's a matter of mindfulness. I studied Buddhism, Judaism. I'm a seeker. So I sought out every single avenue in order for me to be a more grounded, God-centered person. Because it says in the third step, where, we turn our will and our life over to the care of God. And I had to really do that. And what really got me there was when I was struggling with infertility. I had to learn how to really trust God. It's very easy to have faith, but it's very hard to have trust. So that has been the pivotal moment in my sobriety. And that I can trust God, not know that my life, take my hands off my own life and back away from it and let a higher power in, really just did the trick. But it took a lot of seeking to get there, and because I struggle from a lot of outside issues, which is eating disorders, anxiety, depression. I had lots of food issues around, my self-worth. So it was like a lot of things I had to deal with. And I had to deal with it both in the spiritual realm and then in like therapy. And the two together, caused this sort of like spiritual awakening.
So you're what I like to call a seeker. You're someone who said, okay, this is a set of guidelines by which I'm supposed to live my life, but it's not enough. There's got to be more. And you investigated everything you could find and you picked the pieces that worked for you. And you said, this is going to work for me. That's rare. With people getting sober, they don't want to do that kind of work. They want someone to hand them a bunch of papers and say, this is what you need to do. Just, follow this plan. Very similar to a diet. If you eat this, 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 and this, you'll be fine. And a lot of people get in that rut and it doesn't happen fast enough. So you actually put the work into getting where you are today. Now, do you have people ask you how you got from where you were to where you are?
Yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of podcasts. I've done a lot of, I get asked to speak a lot. I think it starts off as a we program. We're going to a lot of meetings, we're doing fellowship, and then it turns into an I program. It turns into a seeking program. You've got to go off and find your true connection to your higher power. When I sponsor, that's how I sponsor. It's like, okay, well, let's get you closer to a relationship with your higher power, because that is the most important relationship you're going to have in your life. I don't think a lot of people really get the God thing, really get the higher power thing. They rely on the fellowship, they rely on other stuff. And that's why you don't see a lot of success. But the people that I look up to in the program, the people in recovery, are the ones that have that deep spiritual connection, that conscious contact.
Now, you work with a lot of comedians, and I'm sure musicians and actors and such. How rampant would you say the epidemic of drug addiction is at the moment?
It's huge. Everyone I know is in the program, and I work my day job is at an entertainment law firm, and we represent everybody. And there's so many people who are struggling or new in sobriety, so many clients, and it's rampant. I mean, I think the kind of lifestyle as a musician, like that's just what it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Comedian is kind of the same thing. And I think as a creative person, having like a very busy brain like that, is a creative brain, kind of lends itself to drugs and alcohol and that kind of lifestyle more than, let's say, like an accountant or something like that.
Then you've got to deal with the public. So if you have a bad performance or you get a bad rating or, there's a bad picture of you in the press, you've got to deal with that too. So then you have people, saying negative things, negative reviews, et cetera, et cetera. I had one client, famous actress, that they simply took a picture of her. She was coming out of a venue and it was not a flattering photo. And she wasn't drunk. She wasn't high. She was sober. And they wrote, "Oh my God, she's gained weight." That was the headline. And she called me in tears. And she goes, "I haven't gained a pound. I've been the same weight for the past 5 years. But the photo, the way they shot the photo and what she was wearing really made her look heavy." And she was in tears. And she's like, "I just want to drink and I want to eat and I'm a mess." So I had to talk her off the ledge. So you also have that other pressure that, say, the average or normal person who goes to work and comes home doesn't have.
Yeah, no, that's the kind of pressure. I mean, I remember Carrie and I went to William Shatner roast. Mm-hmm. They sat us up front and I was like, oh no, they're going to go after Carrie. And they did. Yeah. And they went after her weight. They went after how she looked. And I know, like Patton, it was a funny joke, but it was so mean. But Patton Oswalt was like, "Hey, Carrie Fisher's here, everybody. What happened to you, Carrie? Did you lose, a Percocet eating contest with Chewbacca?" And like, everyone's laughing. And I look at Carrie and she's like, "No, it was Vicodin, and I was like, and we got home later and she was crushed. She was like, "Do I look fat? Do I look fit?" And I'm like, cannot listen to these people. It's like none of your business what other people think or say about you.
I was watching the Justin Bieber roast and another roast, and I saw they had Courtney Love on. And they did the same thing to her. They made fun of her makeup, her weight, her hair, her addiction. And she just rolled with it. She just, she was sitting upside down in the chair and she just figured at this point, might as well. They're already there. I might as well just continue the progression of it.
Yeah, they roll with it, but then when they get home, it's not that way. It hurts.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I get those calls of desperation. So how do you deal with that? How do you handle that in your personal life and your circle? Is that something, do you guys talk about it? Do you call each other? Do you have a support system? What do you do?
I have a very strong support system, but I've also stopped reading comments about myself. I went through a very public lawsuit against Jenny Craig, and I was on TMZ, People Magazine, USA Today, The Today Show, and they were going after me. I literally hid under my desk for a few days. I was so horrified, but then I was, you know what? Own it. Just don't shy away from it. And people are going to say the meanest things about you. And you just have to let it, there's a bigger purpose here. I was like, there's a bigger purpose for what's going on. Don't read the comments. Don't pay attention to what the press is saying about you. Just go on and know what your purpose is in life and not get bogged down by what other people say. There's always going to be people like that. And those are the people who aren't putting themselves out there, aren't doing anything important with their lives. So they have to knock down everybody else. So I have to kind of see okay, why is this happening? Why are they doing this? This is their job. And I have to be strong enough to make it past that.
I call those people keyboard commandos. It's easy to sit behind your keyboard and write something while you're eating a donut and saying that somebody else is fat or using drugs or looking, not their best. It's easy to do that. It's hard to actually go out there and be in front of people and do what that person can do. So I commend you for that. I mean, that's hard work.
Yeah. I mean, as one of my sponsors says, the harder the road, the higher the purpose. Mm-hmm. It's if your road is tough, know that you're meant to do something pretty extraordinary in this world.
That brings us right into your second career. Your first career, as a comedian and doing all of that. Now you're this huge spokesperson. Tell me more about this organization and tell me what you have going on November 7th.
The organization we're doing the event for is called This Is My Brave, and they're mental health and addiction awareness. This is their biggest show that they've done so far. Usually they do shows in Boston and New York and, DC and Iowa. And they have people with mental illness and addiction talk about their stories. And so since they asked me to do the show in LA, I was like, well, I want to do it like I do my other shows, which is these kind of big shows with comedians and music. And I've been doing variety shows for a while now. We have some really great comedians who have bipolar, who struggle with addiction, who are sober. We have musicians, Rock to Recovery guys. They're going to be performing. They're members of Korn and Slipknot. They're going to be doing a Chester Bennington and Chris Cornell tribute. And then we have, I can't say who it is yet, but we have a very big comedian who's on TV right now, and he's got OCD. He's going to be doing some stand-up about that. We've got Jerry Quickly, who is a radio show host, and he's a poet and fantastic poet. We've got just people who really have a good voice in this area, talk about their mental illness, do jokes about it. And I'm going to do jokes about it. And you're on it too. We're talking about mental illness and addiction. I think it's just very important that we raise our voices and end the stigma. And so the show is November 7th at the Comedy Store at 8 p.m. The tickets are $20, $25 at the door. I don't know the link offhand, but
we'll post it. We'll post it up for everybody.
Yeah, and it's going to be great. I mean, there's music, there's comedy, there's poetry, there's it's going to be an interesting, great show. We've got a lot of VIPs coming. We've got some senators, some congressmen. It's going to be really great.
It sounds awesome. It's so nice to see people really bringing awareness to this. I think when Robin Williams started first talking about his, years ago, people were like, oh, there's something really wrong with him. And then Jim Carrey came forward and talked about his. And little bit by little bit, there were, and it was always the comedians that would say, It's tough work, but a lot of our body of our work comes from our mental illness. And the one thing I noticed as I watched, there's a lot of trauma in people's backgrounds, and they started talking about it. And little bit by little bit, as a society, we have said it's okay to have mental illness. These people on TV are just like me sitting on my sofa, because we idolize stars and we idolize celebrities and say they couldn't possibly have anything wrong with them. They're on my television. And then you go, oh my God, she's bipolar and I'm bipolar. Wow. And she's still up there on my TV, which is amazing because you're working through major hurdles. So I think having a benefit like this, where there are people in the industry that support each other, bringing awareness to this is fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I do. And I think like next year I'll do a festival. I mean, there's just so many things that, I just really just want to get the word out there. Because I, as I told you before, like I'm writing a book now of essays and interviews of celebrities with mental illness that'll go along with the shows and get the word out there and get people to start talking about it and say, you know what, hey, I can talk about it too. And let's end the stigma.
That's fantastic. And as you progress along with that, I'd like to have you back on and we can talk more about the stories, like the behind the scenes stuff that people don't generally see, the nitty gritty of mental illness. I'm a food addict first, pill addict secondary, but I was raised in a house of mental illness. My father is severe bipolar, severe. My grandmother was borderline. So it was crazy. And I remember constant arguing and crying and my dad pointing a gun at me and pointing a gun at himself. And I remember all that. And I think once you get into those stories, I'd like to talk more, not necessarily whose story it is, but that actual story, that the trials and tribulations someone goes through with mental illness and how they come out the other side swinging and winning, because that's so important.
Yeah. And you can and recovery is possible no matter what the trauma is. That's what I want to say too. Like, it seems like, well, all of this stuff has happened to me. I've been sexually abused. I've been, incest or all of these things that happened to me. How do I recover? I can never be the same, or I can never be recovered. And I'm here to tell you that you can, anything is possible. So we can't get bogged down in all the, trauma of it. Like, we really have to tell your story, get it out there. That helps other people tell their story. That's what this is My Brave is all about. Tell your story. It's okay. And we don't have to be ashamed of it, and we can recover from it.
That's fantastic. So how can everyone find you? Where can they find you and your message if they want to connect?
They can go to my website, marashapshay.com.
And where would they find the event I'm going to post for us for November 7th so that they can access that directly?
Yes, I'll put it on my website. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Mara Shapshay or at M Shapshay Comic Baker. Okay,
perfect. And we'll include all your links for everybody to see as well, so they can reach out to you about the bakery and about the event, and of course supporting the nonprofit and helping you get the message out there.
Yeah, I do bake mental health awareness baked goods too. That's the business that I'm starting, but it's the book is taking precedent over that. But I do make schizophrenic snickerdoodles and bipolar cookies and therapy couch cupcakes, all to raise money for mental health organizations.
That's so neat. That's so unique. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know you're super busy.
Yeah, well, I'm recovering from surgery right now, so
I caught you at the right time.
Exactly.
Well, thank you again, everyone. That was Mara Shapshay, and I'll put all the links up so you can reach her. And this is Callie Estes with UnpauseYourLife.com. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Head on over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or review of what you think. Or contact us at 1-800-706-0318. If you want to be on our show, feel free to email or call. And if you have a topic, feel free to email or call as well.
Thanks for listening to Unpause Your Life. For show notes and more, head on over to unpauseyourlife.com.
Big shout out to recoveryinnovators.com for help producing this show. Thank you, guys.
I took a walk down the long road where they said that I shouldn't go. On my way found a reason to wake up another day. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I may be weak, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just not so hard to believe. To believe. To believe. I took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of flying. Now I'm so far from solid ground. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I may be weak, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death. Just give me something that's just not so hard to believe.